ways. So how do we behave when the cold hands of tax are upon us? Here are a few things we know. One of the things we know, courtesy of Chye-Ching and Slimrod, is that on the face of it at least, some people die early in order to avoid taxes. So they found out in 2001 that more wealthy people who face the estate tax die just before the estate tax rates go up than would otherwise statistically be expected. It's a true story. Beautiful natural experiment. And this wonderful piece of research led them to win the Nobel Prize for research that cannot or should not be replicated, which it was then very promptly replicated in Australia and Sweden by researchers that had similar natural experiments. So they offered to hand back the prize. The other thing that we do know about taxes and behaviour, though, is that many people faced with very large changes in taxes really don't do anything at all. Many important behaviours like work and savings don't really seem to respond at all much to taxes. So, for example, we have lots of studies, empirical evidence that shows high-income prime-age males. Let's hear it for the prime-age males out there. When income taxes go up, their work hours change imperceptibly. However, on the other hand, we also know that low and moderate income people, when faced with a tax credit for going and earning salary and wages, actually do change their work hours quite a lot. So, and in particular, we know that they enter the workforce more than they otherwise would have. Now, the behavioural economics craze hasn't bypassed tax economics, so we also know that in addition to responding to classical incentives that are created by tax, people also respond to these weird behavioural things when faced with taxes. So we do know that it matters what you call a rose. So Berman and his co-authors found that if you have a tax on taking money out of pension funds, that disincentive works a whole lot better if you call that disincentive a penalty rather than a tax. So where does this whole mess leave us? We've got people that are dying early in order to avoid taxes. We've got people that are just staying put. We've got people that are responding to incentives in the way that you would expect, and we've got people that are doing all this weird behavioural stuff. How does this all fit together? A few things that help me put it all together. The first of these things is to realise that we know that when people face a tax change, they change what they report to the IRS a lot. They change things on paper. That doesn't mean that their actual real life behaviours, their work, their savings, consumption activities are actually changing as well. So this helps explain a lot of the weird results that we find. So that's what Chye-Ching and Slimrod thinks was happening with their estate tax example. It wasn't that people were shuffling off this mortal coil actually earlier, it was just that their doctors and their lawyers were telling the IRS that they were shuffling off this mortal coil just in time to avoid an estate tax increase. In fact, when you get rid of all that avoidance behaviour and temporary timing shifts, it's very, very hard indeed to find any large, real responses that persist over time to tax changes. So real changes to work, behaviour, and savings and those sorts of things. Another thing that helps make sense of all of this is that there's a lot of heterogeneity in the way that people respond to taxes. So those prime-age men, high-income males, they may change their work hours a lot in response to taxes. Not work hours, not very much at all in response to taxes, but it's a whole different story for people who are just on the cusp of retirement. And we also know that married women who are second earners in the household also change their work hours quite a lot relatively in response to tax changes. Another thing that helps us make sense of all of this is to realise that even the classical economic incentives push and pull in different directions. So if taxes on work go up, on the one hand, I might want to work less because my return to working has gone down. Why would I want to work more? But on the other hand, I might actually want to work more because I might want to maintain the same standard of living that I had before the tax increase. So that helps us to understand why, in the face of some very large tax changes, some people just sort of tend to stay put because they're being pulled in these different directions. A final thing that helps put this all together is just to realise that we don't know a lot yet about the richness of human behaviour and how it responds to taxes. So a fun little study just out recently shows that college students, about 80 of them, male, if you put them in a room with very attractive young women, they will pay more taxes voluntarily, contribute more to public goods than they would otherwise.